The sun dipped low behind the slate roofs of St. Jude's Academy, casting long amber shadows across the empty cobblestone courtyard. Bastian sat alone in the library, his fingers tracing the frayed edges of a failing mathematics exam that felt more like a heavy anchor than a piece of paper. Every number on the page seemed to mock his effort, a stark reminder that no matter how hard he tried, the path forward remained a blurred and confusing maze. He let out a heavy sigh, the sound echoing softly against the towering shelves of forgotten books and dust motes dancing in the fading light. As he gathered his things to leave, a rhythmic, muffled sound drifted through the heavy floorboards, a steady tap-tap scrape that felt out of place in the silent school. It was a curious melody of labor that seemed to breathe life into the cold stone walls of the basement levels far below. Bastian crept down the creaking stairs, the sound growing louder with every step he took into the heart of the old building. He paused by the heavy oak door of the woodshop, whispering to himself, "Who could possibly be working at this hour?" He peered through the small glass pane and saw a figure bathed in the warm glow of a single hanging lamp, surrounded by a sea of broken furniture and cedar shavings. It was Madame Vesper, the school's most formidable teacher, her silver hair catching the light as she moved with a grace he had never seen in the classroom. Bastian watched as she carefully applied glue to a splintered chair leg, her hands steady and sure despite the late hour. He accidentally nudged a metal bucket, and as it clattered, she looked up sharply, her voice echoing through the workshop as she asked, "Who goes there in the dark?" Bastian stepped into the light, his face flushing with embarrassment as he stammered, "I am sorry, Madame Vesper. I just heard the noise and wondered what was happening." She set down her tool and looked at him, her gaze softening slightly as she said, "Curiosity is a rare trait in my classroom these days, Bastian." The workshop smelled of pine and ancient beeswax, a comforting scent that seemed to push back the cold despair of his failing grades. Dozens of chairs, once wobbly and discarded, stood in neat rows against the back wall, their surfaces polished to a mirror-like sheen under her expert care. Bastian gestured to the piles of furniture and asked quietly, "Why do you do this? The school would just buy new ones if they knew these were broken." Madame Vesper ran a hand over a smooth joint and replied, "Because things that are broken deserve to be made whole again by someone who cares." She motioned for him to come closer, handing him a piece of fine grit sandpaper and pointing to a small scarred desk. There was no judgment in her eyes, only the quiet invitation of a craftsperson welcoming a new apprentice into a world of hidden labor. Bastian began to sand the wood, the repetitive motion calming his racing thoughts as he worked in silence alongside his teacher. After a long moment, she spoke without looking up, saying, "A student sits in this chair and feels only the stability. They never know the hours spent ensuring it does not wobble." Bastian stopped and looked at her, his voice trembling slightly as he confessed, "I feel like one of those broken chairs, madame. No matter how much I sand myself down, I still feel like I am failing." She paused and said firmly, "The wood does not fail, Bastian. It only waits for the right hand to guide it." The clock on the wall ticked steadily, marking the passage of hours as they worked together, the student and the teacher bridging the gap between failure and craft. For the first time in years, Bastian felt his hands doing something that mattered, a physical manifestation of effort that resulted in something tangible and strong. Madame Vesper looked at the desk they had finished and said softly, "The world is built on invisible foundations, the work people do when no one is watching to make sure the world keeps turning." Bastian whispered in response, "I never realized how much beauty there is in the things we take for granted." A week passed, and the halls of the school felt different to Bastian, no longer a place of judgment but a sanctuary of hidden efforts. He found himself looking at the floorboards, the railings, and the desks with a new sense of reverence, wondering who else worked in the shadows to maintain the peace. He sat down for his next exam, the paper no longer feeling like an anchor, but like a piece of raw wood waiting to be shaped. He looked up and saw Madame Vesper watching him from the front of the room, her slight nod saying more than 1,000 words ever could. "Begin your work, Bastian." The struggle was still there, the numbers still danced. But Bastian worked with a new patience, a quiet determination he had learned in the basement workshop. He realized that the grade was not the goal, but the integrity of the effort itself, the invisible foundation of his own future character. Years later, Bastian would stand in his own workshop, his hands calloused and his heart full, remembering the teacher who stayed late to fix broken things. He looked at the student standing in his doorway and smiled, knowing exactly what kind of invisible work was needed to help another soul feel whole. The legacy of Madame Vesper lived on in every joint he glued and every life he touched, a silent testament to the power of unseen devotion. The world continued to turn, held together by the quiet artisans of the heart who labor in the golden light of purpose. In the end, it was never about the furniture, but about the care we give to the world when we think no one is looking. Bastian finally understood that his life was a masterpiece in progress, one steady, invisible brushstroke at a time.